Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hello and welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Lawton. Today I am joined with a special guest, former coworker of mine and friend too, I would say, definitely. We worked together a few years ago. Actually, we worked at two different jobs together as well. She was involved in transportation heavily, and now she's in a new type of role at a different kind of company, but still working in the logistics, transportation industry, providing a pretty interesting service, I think, to workers, and we're going to talk to her about that today. Her name is Amanda Fisher, and she is the Client Success Account Manager for the theEMPLOYEEapp. So she's going to talk to us about her background, how she ended up where she is now, and then she's going to tell us, of course, about the theEMPLOYEEapp, and she's going to talk to us about how that helps organizations communicate more effectively with the deskless worker. So, Amanda.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Definitely, yeah. Good to see you. It's been a little while, but happy to doing this together after working together for a while back then. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, transportation, definitely, but how did you get to where you are now, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, well, so I usually say in college, you know how some people fall in with a bad crowd? I say I fell in with a really wonderful crowd. And basically, I was working a lot of odd jobs, as you do in college, trying to just make ends meet. And I met a group of people in a small trucking company who gave me the opportunity to just run wild. I mean, I started as a bottom line customer service rep and worked my way up to warehouse operations, and where everything opened up doors for me that way. Went to Keurig, met all of you wonderful people.
Yes, definitely.
So I got to, I would say the mentorship that I had through knowing you and our associates at Keurig has.
Yeah. Oh, and side note, episode 2 guest, Dan Corallo, he was actually our boss.
Yeah.
At Keurig. So it's all coming full circle a little bit, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think, I kind of caught the passion that I have for transportation, for trucking and distribution, at Keurig, because I think that gave me a wider exposure. We were traveling around to different distribution centers all the time and getting to see, kind of how people come and go, getting to see how people live their day-to-day lives. So kind of springs into where I've kind of gone in the direction of my career today. So, now I work for the theEMPLOYEEapp, as you mentioned. And basically the theEMPLOYEEapp is it's a communications tool. It's an internal communications tool. And what that means is we provide branded apps, mobile app and web app, for companies to communicate directly with their deskless workforce, right? So for us, that meant for us at L&R and at Keurig, our line workers, our pickers, our packers, shippers, the inventory people, everyone who is on their feet and really in the front lines, right?
Yeah, don't really have access to email or not in front of a computer.
Yeah. Or frequently what we've seen in those situations, right, has been that corporate offices will send out this mass email to everybody about like just the big things, like, oh, we had a change in leadership, or the company's going this way, or like, here's some benefits information.
Yeah.
And that's just completely lost on people whose like only access to a computer is like a few minutes on the floor every day.
Yeah, because then you're kind of relying on the other people to tell them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always necessarily make its way down.
Yeah. But as we know, from a safety perspective, how nobody's supposed to have a phone on the floor.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a phone. So, like, period, So that being said, we found that this has been a really effective way of communicating with those employees.
Okay.
And I think, additionally, like, the thing about those company emails is a lot of companies don't even provide those lower line workers with company email addresses.
Yeah.
Which, like, says a lot about how they feel. Like, I'm sure you've seen, like, in certain warehouse cultures, like, they feel alienated or disposable in some kind of way. Nobody really talks about retention at that level. They're just like, people come and go. We just like
the churn. Right?
Yeah, we'll just replace them. There's just a dozen more just like them. And like they are high demand jobs. They are there is a lot of people there, but as you know, from like a middle manager operational perspective, it's so painful to achieve like the productivity that's required of you by replacing those people.
Yeah, you have to keep retraining and training and just an investment in that. And I think sometimes people at maybe like a higher level in the corporate office don't necessarily realize the investment in time and energy it takes to do that. And then to get somebody that's fully trained to the point where you really want them to be, and then to lose them because they don't feel valued or anything like that, that can really hurt your operation and hurt like your department, depending on what your role is. But so really kind of involving them in the conversation and being a little more, I guess, transparent with them definitely helps to make them feel more like they're a part of something, right?
Yeah, and I think something probably from that episode too, as well with our old boss Dan, like, the idea of building culture being something that you can see within moments of entering a facility.
Yes, definitely.
You can't build the productivity that's being required of you at a corporate level without that kind of culture. Like, people, how are you going to get your people to work, 3 straight shifts extra in a row? It's through loyalty. It's not through. It's not even through the money, because at a certain point, people are like, I don't need an extra $50. They're like, what I need is a team that I feel like I'm having an impact on, and I'm really like, assisting.
Definitely, yeah, because I think that what I've seen is like people, I've heard people say like, shouldn't have to entice them with anything else. They're going to get paid extra overtime, so they should want to work. But people have said to me like, I don't want to work more hours because more taxes, or they don't really know what they're working towards, or like what's the goal, or what's the overall company goal and how are they contributing to it. So being able to like communicate that in a more effective and easy way and standardized way too, I think is important. I think that's kind of what the employee app gives you the ability to do. Yeah.
The whole point with the employee app is to be able to target personalized content to those kinds of groups. So like from a utilitarian standpoint, we know how hard it was to get people trained or to get new training information out, like if there's a piece of new equipment, or even from a safety perspective, just trying to like get all of that information out to everybody was like, there's something new. Literally, I'm chasing down like 150 people with pieces of paper trying to get them to like read it. So this kind of helps. Like, I'm imagining myself back in operations going like, okay, I can like post this one time on the app. And with a read receipt attached, and then I'll be able to see who's read it, and it's just so much like easier, and it's kinder to the environment. So definitely,
and I think the good thing about that too is that it's there so the employee can like reference it. You give somebody like an SOP or work instruction paper, and they don't have a desk, like you said. Maybe they throw it in their locker or their bag, and they take it home, and it just ends up in the trash or whatever. So they're able to reference all that stuff if they have a question or they're not sure about something. And then like the read receipt, I think is huge, definitely, because I'm working on a project myself right now where taking over training, and one of the big things is with OSHA. Sometimes OSHA wants to see your training records. So right now, when we train, we have this form everybody signs the form, but you have like all these pieces of paper with signatures all over them, and if OSHA comes in, audits, and you got to pull out whatever form it is to figure out which training it was that was done to show that everybody was done. That's pain. So being able to have that log, the read receipt, like you said, that's just further confirmation, and it's easier to pull, I'm sure.
Yeah.
To be able to pull those records. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, to your point about the safety stuff, there's such a culture of safety within this entire industry, at the manufacturing level, at the distribution level, with drivers, and we tended to see people recognizing your safety all-stars, your safety champions, in your stand-ups, and you're recognizing them very minimally within your teams. Yeah. And it's really up to each and every manager to do their best to make them feel like they're doing the right thing. What we've seen with the app is that people are able to make people famous for a day within the company. You're able to recognize people at a company-wide level for those kinds of things. Run even safety competitions for people to be, having which warehouse or distribution center has the best record over the next certain amount of day. And that kind of stuff is priceless in terms of trying to promote safety as a work culture.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's really important too, and the visibility I think that the app gives you to those types of things, because even I'm thinking right now about how you have you may have an all hands meeting, right? Yeah. And you tell everybody all that stuff, but then you have 4 people that were on vacation that day or something, or somebody that called out sick. But now not only are you having your all hands meeting, which is good, but then you're pushing out that same communication from that meeting through the app, right? Yeah. So these people will still see it, they'll still be informed, and they won't hear, from down the chain, through the grapevine about what happened, and then whatever happened gets misconstrued, and it's this whole big rumor in the warehouse, all this type of thing. So I think that's really good. So, what other type of capabilities are there? I think, there's some social media aspect to it in a way.
Yeah. So basically, aside from having this regular ability to control what content you're pushing out in the app, so that's entirely up to each client when they take over the app, what kind of content they're pushing out. We have a lot of preset features. You have the ability to turn your employees into brand advocates. For example, I can just say it's at an individual content piece perspective. So if you just have one post that you want to allow everybody to share, you can do that, and you can also control if you don't want that to happen. You can enable likes and commenting to see how people are engaging with things. From a social media aspect, we have situations where, let's say you have your team doing something you're really proud of, like a charity event. You have a team building event, everybody goes out and picks up trash. You can enable on a piece of content that you're sharing about a photo of everybody, of the team helping out in the community, and allow them to share that on any social media that they have access to, so they can repost that to Twitter and LinkedIn and whatever they happen to like. So that you kind of spread the word outside of the company.
That's really cool, because then it gives you almost exposure to the culture that you have of your company.
Exactly, yeah. And as you know, some companies have a beautiful reputation for that kind of culture.
Yeah, definitely.
That helps with recruiting in the long run. When people want to work for you, that's again, priceless kind of, thing that you can't really attach enough value to. It's just, not having to go out and scrounge.
Yeah, and I think that being able to kind of share that it gives them a sense of pride with their work as well, and where they work, and being able to share that with family, is a big deal for a lot of people. And I think that at the level, that we're really talking about, this deskless worker, right? At that level, their work is one of probably the biggest parts of their life, right? So to be able to kind of show that off and be proud of what you're doing, I think is a really great thing.
Yeah, and we see people using it for a mix of utilitarian things and also fun things. And you're seeing the more that people engage with the app, you're seeing kind of what's important to people, and it's kind of like a good way to have like a thermometer on how things are going inside each building.
Yeah.
And so I can share that with Toyota. When we started with Toyota, we started with just one facility, and this is frequently how things work with
like
larger
test,
networks. You have one building who's like, well, try it, and then over time you grow with them. And now we're with their entire manufacturing team in the country, and then from there we're into Toyota Industrial. And with that being the case, they you see in each building this clear picture of how that team engages with things. They're having cute baby photo contests. They have they're having their team outing, and they're like everybody. You've got 42 people saying how much they loved it, and you've got engagement surveys, and just this wonderful, all these things that you can do. And now, with the platform that we provide and with the analytics that we provide, we have a very tangible way of knowing what's working, what's not, where are people unhappy, where are people happy. And this is something that I think is missing from a lot of building culture. Like when you're trying to determine things, it's like it's either just a feeling, it's good or it's bad, it's a pass or it's a fail. Yeah. And this helps to kind of quantify and help to like strategize where you're going with things.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that you can kind of get more of a detailed look of your employee engagement and like what people are really reacting to. Because I think, sometimes you maybe just ask a handful of people, like when you see them, think about it. Oh, what do you think about this and that? And then you don't really get a real sense of what's actually working and what's not working in terms of like a culture building standpoint, and what are employees really receptive to, and you may think that like, oh, I have this great idea to do this thing for the employees, and then maybe the employees like are just putting on a smile and grin and bear it, and but really in reality you could probably do some kind of real-time engagement with the app, like you said.
Yeah, and I think something we've seen a lot. Just you and I have seen a lot, is that the trucks never stop moving, right? So everything is about a lot of high quality work in a short amount of time. Yeah. And that breeds a lot of different emotions at the line worker level. It can be high pressure, it can be fun, but it has to be managed very carefully and delicately. And I think what happens in those situations, you have these interdepartmental frustrations, you have these warehouse frustrations where everybody's constantly looking at each other, looking for, where did this go wrong? And like, I did my part. And there's a lot of, we used to call it siloing, right? Where you have this like very small view of like, I'm in inventory control and I know what I did was right. And I'm in a picker and I do what I do. Yeah. But the thing about the app is that it helps build this like inclusivity. Like the purpose is that everybody's part of the same team. You get to build work teams and have this like big picture perspective. We've heard people on the third shift, for instance, so they're working late at night. They're a smaller team, and they have almost no contact with the day team. Yeah,
they're almost like detached. Yeah.
So we'll see in the app, they leave messages for each other. They'll start asking, they'll ask a question, and they'll see what's happening during the day, and vice versa. You can post pictures to show what's happening at night, or to recognize people across those shifts, and it helps kind of build this more sustainable connectivity.
That's great, because I know from experience, like sometimes you have your third shift, and then there's like a couple hours break in between third shift and when your first shift actually starts, and third shift will do something. Move some pallets or something, and you come in on first shift, you have no idea why. Yeah. And then you can't really get a hold of anybody because everybody's asleep now. So being able to have that really easy way to kind of do handoff and, have more information about what's going on, then, I think that's really a great benefit to the app, it sounds like. Yeah. So now, what about the app in terms of, like, if somebody is interested in the app, how do they implement? Like, how does that work?
Right. So, it's basically 4 to 6 weeks. We would give, a list of requirements, mostly around imagery, right? So you need to build it to the brand.
And it's fully customizable, right?
Yeah, it is. It's customizable to the particular brand. For instance, if a single house of brands encompasses a lot of other little ones. So like we have Toyota Manufacturing and Toyota Industrial.
Yeah.
They're able to brand each, separately.
Okay.
So if they have different logos or whatever would be recognizable to that employee as this is where I work. You know? And that being said, we have a lot of clients who seem to get most hung up on what to name the app, and I think that's the only thing that people
Really?
talk about a lot, because you can name it anything you want, really, and it's just what's going to be the most engaging for your.
So do you guys help with the name development?
I mean, we make suggestions, but
I know
I don't
you
know
have a creative writing background.
I do have a creative writing background, yeah. Well, and that's actually part of it too. Is we offer a lot of guidance. So the company was founded by a communications professional. We have a team of comms professionals who they help you implement the app, but they also over time will help develop your content strategy. So. They have a lot of input. We have, consultative meetings and things like that where we help people to kind of guide through what's going to work best for their people. We make a roadmap at the beginning to kind of say this is how we think things should be set up, and they're all suggestions, and we've certainly seen clients run with it creatively.
Yeah.
So there's a lot you can do.
Okay. All right. So in terms of implementation, and then sounds like the bulk of the time is just creating the app and customizing it to the customer. And then how has the rollout to employees been? Employees have been very receptive to it?
Oh, yeah. It depends. It has a lot to do with your marketing strategy. How are you telling people about the app?
Okay.
I mean, we've seen people take a deliberately slow approach where, you have someone in HR visiting every site and, making everyone download in front of them. Or, but we've also seen, people make it really fun with incentivizing and having, download the app and, you'll be entered into a sweepstakes for a PTO day or, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Or first 20 downloads get a free t-shirt.
Usually it's pizza. I feel like pizza is the winner for getting people to download the app.
Pizza's always the incentive.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pizza going around with the app. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now what about in terms of, the employee, actually has an individual login? Is that how you can track who
and
has the app and who's engaging?
Exactly, yeah. And that's part of the setup process is you're coming up with this, your list, whether it's automated or, manual of who is in what groups, who needs to be included in what kinds of communications and that kind of thing. So.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned Toyota, right? So Toyota sounds like it's definitely having some success with it, right?
And I'm a huge Toyota fangirl.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You haven't picked up on that?
I remember we were talking about that 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah,
right?
yes. Yeah. So Toyota, in general, in the industry, I think they have a lot of best practices.
Okay, cool.
But, yeah.
And what about, do you have any other client success stories to talk about, or any unique ways that clients are utilizing the app?
Yeah, so NFI actually, another company in the industry who is using the app, and it's very interesting because they have a uniquely challenging situation with getting truck drivers to download and use
truck
the
drivers
app.
are a tough
They can
breed.
be a tough crowd, yeah. I mean, especially when it comes to technology. But actually, they love it, and the way that they did this, the unique aspect of it, is that they've really localized their content. So, every, their local dispatchers and hub managers have control to publish within the app. So they're only seeing communications that are intended for them, and I think that's where you win people over. Is when you're sending out these blanket to everyone emails, or to everyone communications, the truckers particularly are good at saying, like, well, I'm not having any more of that.
Yeah.
You know, so, like, if they're seeing something that's actually relative to them, you know, and part of that has to do with emergency communications. We do allow, you know, limited use of push notifications or broadcast alerts, which, like, you know, I-95 is closed today, or, you know, this pickup canceled, done, like, you know, those kinds of things you can send out to an entire, you know, group of people who are working on that load, or, you know.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I didn't even think about the traffic aspect or anything like that. So like, getting to that point, how does it work in terms of, so like, say I'm an operations manager and something is happening, I decide I want to push out a notification to all the employees at my site that we're going to have a warehouse meeting at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how does that work? Can I just, like, go in and just select who I want to send it to? And
yeah, well, so it wouldn't be on an individual basis. It'd be like a group, right? So frequently what we'll see is, like, you'll have team leads or dock managers, or, you know, you can say, you know, Texas team leads, you know, something, whatever specific. And then, you know, as we know, like, a lot of those middle managers are the ones with the phones on the floor. So they all get the message, and then they round people up.
Got it.
So you can do that. And the interesting thing is you can do that, like, either as, like, just an alert, like just text, it shows up on your phone, like, get to meeting room A, you know. Or you can set it up attached to a piece of content. Like, so let's say you're having a company event, you know, like barbecue at 6. You can, like, create a really nice piece of content with, like, a thumbnail image that looks nice.
Like a little flyer,
and then also attach a push notification just so that, like, you know, people are driven to click on it more. So
got it. Okay, interesting. So, you know, what about in terms of the employee, like the deskless worker? Like, are they able to post things, or
it's entirely up to you. So I've seen companies who let the entire company post, right? So if they trust everyone, great, they let everybody post. I've seen it happen. You can let them post in particular areas in the app. You can kind of customize and control where they're allowed to add things and some of what they're allowed to add. But I've also seen, you know, a lot of success, particularly in this industry, with just allowing groups. Like, so let's say each facility has a, like, leader of the app who's like, they're pushing it out. And then maybe what you do is, like, for conversational pieces, you allow commenting, right? So if you allow commenting, then everybody can go ahead and, like, say what they think, right? So, hey, we're trying out this new piece of technology over in Lot 7. What does everybody think? And then you can kind of collect and see what people's thoughts are.
Okay, really interesting. I like the idea of being able to just push out communication to a group, right? Because I think, you know, even as myself, as a worker that has a desk and, you know, gets email regularly, when you get that, like, all company email that says, you know, in this building, we're having like omelets for breakfast, right? You're like, you get a little frustrated because you're like, I'm not in that building.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting omelets for breakfast. So why are you sending that to me? And I think from like an HR perspective and an overall company communication and culture perspective, like, you know, I mean, I get it, but like some people, you know, could probably take that and be a little offended, like, oh, like, why do they get omelets in that building, and we don't get omelets here? Like, where are my omelets? Like,
Warehouse 3 go home early today, and then Warehouse 5, what? Why don't we get to go home early?
Yeah. So being able to, from like a, you know, higher level standpoint, being able to target the communication, I think that also alleviates a lot of issues that maybe are not something that's necessarily seen, but I think has like small, tiny little effects on workers as feeling like they're not included, you know. And a lot of times, like at distribution centers, the distribution center is not necessarily where the headquarters is.
Right.
But then the headquarters is always doing all these events and everything like that, and you know, you get to see like, oh, they had a baking contest for Valentine's Day, but
like, isn't that nice?
Well, nobody said anything to us about having a baking contest, so. You know, I think that being able to target just specific groups of who you're communicating to is definitely a benefit from like a HR culture communication perspective as well for the company.
Yeah. Like, also, I think, So something I like to talk about with the app a lot is that we're humanizing leadership a lot as well, like from a top-down perspective. Yeah. So like, as you may remember, like seeing, just as a line worker, you have like this bodiless leadership team. Like there's people you never meet, they just definitely. Like they're the man. You know what I mean? Like they run the company. And it's like, and frequently like you almost see teams like band together over like this unseen figure. Like we're really, we're working hard for the man kind of thing, and this kind of like brings them down to a more human level. Like we give the ability within the app to kind of take like candid videos, and we really encourage that kind of thing so that like, just 10 minutes or even like 3 minutes with the CEO every once in a while, and people know who he is, they know what he thinks. And then just from our perspective too, like there's all these surprise walkthroughs really put people on edge. Like, somebody doesn't introduce themselves, just like walking through and everybody's,
it's like, who they are, and everybody's like whispering who they are, but then they don't come and like interact. So I think that's good. It gives you like a different option to interact. And I think that's good from those who are listening that are at the higher leadership level. It's good for you as well because, maybe you oversee like 6 DCs throughout the country and, you can't be there every day. But if you can push out communication to them like on a more regular basis, then, it increases, I guess, your workers' visibility to you, and like you said, makes you more like human than like, this mythical figure that sits high in the office somewhere. Yeah, and wherever.
Even from like a networking perspective, something I love about this industry is how like everything is very mobile, right? So like how many times have you heard a story of like a picker or packer having the right conversation with the right person at the right time, getting into a lead role, getting into a management role, having an entire career laid out for them within a company, right? And I think this kind of opens that door for people who would be shyer about it, or people who would be more intimidated about it because they feel this comforting presence of a company culture. They feel this, I'm part of the bigger picture thing, and maybe that helps people with mobility. And we've seen it help with retention. We've seen, companies like Toyota, they have lifers. They have retirees, people who stay with that company forever.
That's hard to come by now. Yeah.
It's so hard to build. And, again, from like a management perspective, saves so much time and money and energy to just build a productive team that you can stick with.
Yes, definitely. I agree. So the employee app, how do people find out more about the employee app?
Well, so basically you would contact us directly. We have a website. You can literally click a button and it'll take you to.
Okay. And what's the website?
It is theEMPLOYEEapp.com.
Okay, very easy.
Very easy. Somebody will always be in touch, so.
Okay, great. So we'll definitely post more information about that at thenewwarehouse.com. And Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the New Warehouse podcast.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.